Hi there, it's Angie Bird, and you're listening to Midlife Magic and Mayhem. Psychology, parts work, somatic healing, movement, dance, embodiment, parenting, sex, relationships. This conversation with therapist Deb Rubin is especially dynamic and expansive. Every piece of Deb's work resonates deeply with me, and she drops many nuggets in this episode. According to Deb, love and deep connection are her lifelines. She's a licensed clinical social worker and has worked in numerous therapeutic job settings as well as sexual health education, consciously blending the best of both Eastern and Western theories into her practice. Her experience includes working with both young adults and adults in multiple facets of life, including relationships, self-esteem, sexuality, life transitions, attachment styles, parenting, anxiety and depression, preparing for motherhood, grief and loss, and trauma work. Deb has worked with the Colorado Outward Bound School, Women's Wilderness Institute, Planned Parenthood, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs Hospital, Colorado University's Psychological and Psychiatry Department, and eventually landed her own private therapeutic practice in 2006. In 2017, she expanded to include parent coaching and group facilitation through her program, The Mother-Daughter Journey. You can find out more on her website, motherdaughterjourney.co, and her podcast, Motherhood Uncut. And I have linked all of that in the show notes. Deb's energy is contagious, and I invite you to slow down and really listen to this conversation. Please enjoy this discussion with Deb Rubin. Good morning, Deb. How are you?
I'm well. Good morning, Angie. Thanks for having me.
Yes, it's nice to see you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So tell us a bit about you. I always love to start with people's stories and how they came to be, who they are, where they are, and give us some context about who is Deb and what are you up to in the world?
Oh, such a good question, and it's a big question. Okay, so I'll start with who I am today because I think that kind of feeds into how I got here. But right now, I am a psychotherapist. I've been a therapist in this community for over 19 years. I'm a group facilitator. I run workshops called the Mother-Daughter Journey that is about really empowering moms to learn different ways to relate to adolescent girls and adolescents. I actually start at age 9 and move up through 10th grade right now. And these workshops are really about building connection and learning ways to understand our own stuff as moms so we can actually come from a steady place to show up for our girls so that they can actually really be exactly who they are, not just little versions of us. And that's a very simple version of what my workshops are about. And then I do parent coaching on the side as well, which I'm loving. But before I got into the workshop piece, I was mostly focused on couples work and really loved watching people learn ways to connect. And that's kind of when I took my connection inspirations and transferred them to mother-daughter relationships. That's where it came from. But the story of how I got here is actually really kind of long and windy, and I'll keep it somewhat short. But I moved out to Colorado from Connecticut when I was 18 years old, started to go down the kind of traditional education route, realized very quickly that that was not for me. I was just not ready to learn in that kind of environment. And I took some time off and I became a mountaineering guide and followed a love of music and just wanted to play for a while. Landed in Breckenridge for a little while, and then eventually found my way to Colorado, where I literally stumbled across Naropa University, where I walked in and I just walked into this building and was like, where am I? What is this place? And this woman sat down with me, offered me a cup of tea, and she was like, what are you interested in? And I was like, people. I love people. And she told me about her program. And then I kind of got on that track and it's sort of been history ever since.
What a fabulous demonstration of what education could be.
Mm,
To
yes.
sit down with a prospective student or a young person or a person of any age and say, what are you interested in?
Yeah, it was like such a concept. And I actually needed, for my learning style, I needed to explore and be an adventurer in different ways before I could actually get clear about how I wanted to focus. And so, and I have my husband, the majority of the people I grew up with, they went much more the straight and narrow route, and it really worked for them. But I was really lucky to come from a family where my parents were like, you do you. And actually, I've actually never said that out loud in an interview. I'm realizing that that has been kind of the core of my work, is me learning how to do me to be able to empower other people to do them, and that there's no obviously better way. There really isn't, right?
That's brilliant. And if we could all really embody that and understand that our paths really are individual and unique, and yet we weave together with others to form a very unique web. And so it is our own work and our own unique path, and we impact around us. We do have impact, right?
That's right. That's right. And actually, Angie, as you're saying that, I think we have the most impact when we follow the yes, the internal yes. And I think that I've actually, for a long time, was learning how to override kind of the meh. I had the no's were really clear and the yeses were clear, but there was this whole world of in between. And I was like, whether it was relational or professional or friendship, like I can make that work. And that actually wasn't really honoring my truth. And then it wasn't impacting people the way I needed to. And so, I know your podcast is about midlife and the journey of the wisdom that comes with this stage. I would say in this stage of my life, I have really learned how to honor the yes. And when I override the meh, I learn and relearn again that it doesn't serve people. It definitely doesn't serve me, but it really doesn't serve other people.
So I'm imagining, because I know I have this question in myself, and other people might have the same question. What does that look like for you? Overriding the meh. Because when you said that, I got a total full body hit. Like, yes, I get that. And so, what does that look like for you? What does that discernment look like, feel like? Like, no, no, I'm overriding instead of this is a full yes.
Such a good question. I think for me, it's all somatic. I mean, it's like you even just said it, you got a full body experience. I mean, like I'll use a really simple example of choosing a restaurant. Okay. Cause then there's not that much to lose. And so let's say, so my husband, his name is Howie. So we're sitting in the car and he's like, where do you want to go? And so typically I might have been like, I don't care. I'll eat anything because that's sort of true for me too. I can go with the flow pretty easily. But then if he says, okay, great, well, let's go to, Thai food. And in my mind, I'm going through the menu of like, oh, I don't really want that. I don't really want that. Anyway, my body will do this like just subtle contraction. And it's so subtle, but I can feel it. And then this is just a funny conversation. If he's listening, he'll laugh. And then if he says, what about flower child? And I just like feel this like exhale of like, oh, that's affordable. And there's lots of salads and all the things I want, lots of bowls. And, it's like, I think it's just a true relaxed feeling when the yes is real. Yeah.
I love that so much. And I really want to pin that relaxation point
Yeah.
because I think that's I don't know, a skill, a feeling, it's a somatic experience that I think we've almost engineered out. It's
Yes.
that feeling of what does relaxation actually feel like? We think we're relaxed. We think we know, okay, I'm watching Netflix, I'm relaxed, quote unquote, but we're not. We're still clenching. We're still tight. We're still. And so that feeling of do we even know what being relaxed really feels like. And I'm such a proponent and fan of somatic work and embodiment. And because I think that's where all of our messages really come from. It's from the body. And the brain is just
Totally.
processing it. But I love what you just said. It's the difference of feeling of a feeling of relaxation versus a feeling of tightness. And I think that's a very kind of practical way for someone to hold that and to hear that and say, ah, okay, I might be onto something. I think I can follow that track.
I love that. And actually, as you're speaking, I'm kind of thinking this could be something that we have to pay attention throughout the day when we are feeling relaxed so that we can tune into it when we have to make a decision. Right. So that, of course, that can come with meditation practice. That's the obvious kind of how do we learn how to feel our bodies, whatever messages we're getting. But I was just thinking, like, when I left, I went on a hike with a friend this morning. I got in my car and I tuned in with myself and I felt so much joy and ease. And it was after being in her presence. And, and those are, I think, these things that we actually, if we're really waking up to our bodies, we have to make little mental notes of like when it's happening to keep like feeding it a little bit.
Absolutely. I'm even going to give an example as well. And then I want to have some questions about your mother daughter journey. This past weekend, I led a circle based on embodiment. It's a movement practice. I was doing it a lot in Charleston, South Carolina, when we lived there. And it was the first one I had done since moving to Boulder. It was so exciting. There were about 14 women and total strangers, right? No one really knew each other. Like a couple of people knew each other, and I knew one other person, sort of. And it's this community that we're forming here for women over 40, and it was gorgeous. And part of the true beauty and magic of it was you have a group of strangers essentially come together and just move together and become embodied. And the difference, which the women spoke to, the difference in how they felt in their bodies when they came in, and then when we ended, after doing nothing but moving and listening to music, was extraordinary. And we talked about how now you have a memory in your body of what this feels like that you can now access in the future.
That's it.
So that kind of
Yes.
like that it reminded me of what you were
Yes.
just speaking to.
That's it. Oh, I
Yeah.
love it. Congratulations. That's a huge, huge win because to fill a group in this town is not the easiest thing. And to get 14 women that didn't even know each other is so wonderful. That makes me so happy.
And honestly, and I know you'll understand this, just me being very transparent personally, is like there's no lack of circles in Boulder. There's no lack of like movement, people getting together, circling. I mean, there's a lot of things happening in this town on any given day. So I was kind of nervous. I was like, is anybody going to show up? Like,
That's what I'm talking to.
right? I mean,
It's a
whew,
huge accomplishment, Angie. Like
it
mad
was,
props, seriously.
it was, yeah, it was great. So anyway, moving on.
Well, one thing I actually want to say really quick about your movement love, I can really relate to your love of movement because it is literally what fills me up. And I go to dance classes and I go to live music every chance I can. And one thing I'm just loving and appreciating so much in middle age is the ability to express without worry. And it's like it's so liberating. I mean, it is like the most liberating thing, and the way we can communicate through dance, through movement. It's something I actually also do in my workshops, which I can tell you about in a minute. But it's like when we literally just take off that layer of what does my movement look like? What is that person thinking? Am I taking up too much space? Am I too small? I mean, all the things that all of our minds do. And when we can like practice, for me, what I do is I just practice like putting my roots into the ground and like feeling my feet and just telling myself that worried mind is just a part of me. I see you. I love you. I think you need to go lay down for a little while because I am moving right now, and there is nothing to worry about. And I've developed this relationship. I do a lot of IFS therapy, internal family systems therapy with my private practice, but this relationship with that part that has just been profound in finding healing through movement, which it sounds like is right what you're into.
Absolutely. I have learned so much. I mean, and I grew up as a dancer. I've always loved movement of all shapes and sizes and forms. But here in the past year, really diving into more free movement and just expression for the sake of expression. It's not dance. It doesn't have to look like anything. And what I have learned from the free expression of movement paired with intentional music is extraordinary. And I've also worked with someone, I've done some private practice with a teacher here. And I mean, it's some of the best, most profound work I've ever had is through movement and what my body is, what shows up through my body. And it's not my brain, it's not my thoughts, it's what the body is bringing to and bringing forward. And it's absolutely astonishing. And so, I mean, yeah, we definitely have that in common.
I
It's
love it. I love it.
so actually, since you just brought up internal family systems,
Yes,
I have been I've been hearing about this a lot recently, and I would love to know more about it. Tell me about internal family systems and what's involved with that.
absolutely. I know this interview could go so many different directions. Internal family systems is one of, so I started practicing it, I would say around 2020. So it's pretty new for me. I studied Jungian therapy for a long time, and that was the introduction to parts work, like learning about different parts of yourself. And that was wonderful. And it was very archetypal. And there was a lot there that I really leaned on in my early years of practice. But then when I discovered Richard Schwartz and internal family systems, something about his style of teaching and the way he sees it with this 100% non pathologizing lens landed for me in a way that no other modality has. And so I'm going to explain it in the most simplest terms, that we have this whole family inside of our mind, inside of our body, of all these different parts of us that have developed through different stages of our lives. And so when we're really accessing ourself, the one that sees all the parts, the self, capital S, he'll say, is always there. And that sense of self has the ability to have real compassion, real curiosity. He loves C words. So creativity, courage, clarity. There's one more I'm forgetting, but you get the drift. And so when that sense of self is really, really tuned in, we can see all the different parts with that lens of curiosity and compassion and creativity and courage. And when these parts come to life, we actually get to learn about them. And rather than telling, so let's say there's a part, the worried part, since I was talking about that before. Let's say the worried part comes in and she takes over. She thinks she's in charge and she has to worry all the time about everything. And when we're doing IFS, we actually learn to give her a little bit of space so I can see her as as separate from me, but she's not totally me. And then I get to start to have a conversation with her. And as a practitioner, I'll hold space for the client to have an internal process so they can either say it out loud what they're learning or keep it all inside, which is really quite profound because people will start to have almost sounds a little bit like an LSD trip without any drugs because you're starting to really visualize and see the part, get to know it. It has an image, it has a body sensation, and it has a voice. And this is an invitation to learn about that part in such a profound way. So it starts to develop some trust with you. And it starts to learn that you are the CEO, basically, of the scene. You are in charge. And when the part starts to soften, there's always actually a child behind the part that it's been trying to protect. and their terminology is the exile child. And then when the part can kind of step out of the way to let you directly connect with that child, then you have a chance to reparent that child, to bring that child into the here and now, into 2023, because the child's, gets stuck in time. And there's all these other techniques around unburdening this child and really giving the child what it needs, what it needed then, but you have the ability to give it meet those needs now. Did I lose you? Sorry, that was a lot of
No,
words. Okay.
no, I I think it's gorgeous.
It's
Um,
gorgeous. That's a
it's
perfect word.
really gorgeous work. And I've had personally some experience of some types of that in the past. It wasn't called internal family systems. So with these parts, is it in your work, is it important to know how they came to be? Or
Yeah,
is
I
that
think
kind of not so important? We're just dealing with the here and now. But is it important to try and pull that thread of like, where did that part, how did it get formed? When did it get formed?
so. Sometimes it can be very clear. The part might give you an image. It might give you, really important information of when its job came to be, what it thinks its job is, what it's afraid will happen if it stops doing its job. And there's definitely, you will gather a lot of information that will just present itself. But sometimes people are like, I don't know. And that's okay too. So I think that that is just, you just kind of see what unravels naturally, meaning there doesn't always have to be an assigned trauma to a part developing, right? It can be a series of, moments where, let's say, my mom was late to picking me up, and then, that just became this thing. And then the protector came in that was like, I will always be on time, but now I'm like obsessively on time. And so then we get to learn about that and that it gets to relax. It doesn't have to work as hard right now because I'm an adult now and I know how to get us there on time. And it sounds very multi personalities, and none of it is insane. It's very welcome. And but it's a great question. Like, do I need to kind of have to connect all the dots? And I would confidently say no, you don't need to, but you will get a lot of information that will be the information you need.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that sometimes it'll be obvious. It'll present itself like, oh, that's a memory and I can see that and that's where it came from and great. But it doesn't have to be that you go around digging for it. Is that,
That's right. No, you
yeah,
are not digging for it. In
yeah.
fact, that's the other piece, is that as the self, you really stay in yourself. So you get to control how much emotion you want to, feel from this part. You can ask the part to just give you 10% of the emotion. Like, you have so much agency in the process, which is why I notice it doesn't like re-traumatize people and put them in a stuck place. It's very expansive, and there's no bad part. So there, like I said at the beginning, there's no pathologizing in it. It's like the ultimate self-compassion. And it's kind of like anytime we look at humans or ourselves with true compassion, it's like you don't have to try anymore. You're just are. And that is actually the heart of my work with families, parents, and children, is that how to really have true compassion, to understand, so you can actually not be entangled in someone else's story, but actually give them space to just be them, and you have space to just be you.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things I'll bring it personally again back to my own story. One of the things that this past year since we moved to Boulder, for a lot of different reasons, I've been with my husband for 30 years. We've been married for 28. Like we've been together
Amazing.
a long time. And
Yes.
there's a lot of things that have happened in those 30 years, you know,
Hallelujah.
all name it probably. And close to it anyway. So, but in this past year, it's just come up, and we have a very strong, very, very good. I'm very fortunate. We have a very good relationship, and we work at it.
I can
It's not
feel
by
that. Yeah.
it's not by accident.
Totally.
So one of the things that has come up this year, and I think it is part of this midlife threshold of that I'm in and that he's in his own way, is this untangling of our energies and of our stories from each other without being panicked by it, if that makes sense. Because I think
Yes.
what can happen is when we start to say, wait a minute, I get to be me and you get to meet you fully, wholly, WHOL, like wholly, fully. We get to be us as individuals, and we get to create this thing called a relationship and live in that organism itself, and we get to feed it. It's not that we're so intertwined and tangled that if we feel like we individuate at any level at all, that we will pull apart permanently.
Yes.
And sometimes that could be like that's a possibility, but it doesn't have to be.
Oh my God, that I mean, I want you to just write a book about that because it is that
Right?
is like it is the heart of intimacy right there. And it's so interesting. What you're naming is how do I have separateness and connection at the same time? And it's so amazing that you're naming this because this is adolescence too. You just basically described the windy bridge of adolescence in their separation individuation process to feel connected to home, feel safe in the boundaries of the nest of the family, but the confidence to go out and be in community and be out in the world, but then coming back home to land. I mean, that's it. And that's why so many adolescents grow older, but they don't necessarily grow up because they don't actually learn how to have the skills to be their own people when they're overly entangled or insecurely attached with the family system.
And it really speaks to like there's a difference between growing older and maturity.
That's it. Yes.
And then, I mean, I have so many things like there when you were just speaking to the individuation process in adolescence. Is there? Do you see a correlation from with that time of life and the individuation process in midlife?
100%. In fact, I was literally just having this conversation with a friend the other day that so often our stuckness from adolescence will replay itself in midlife. And this is yet just another opportunity to actually really learn how to consciously hold opposing feelings, right? Because okay, so let me back up. When the adolescent is on its way to maturity, one of the key ingredients to maturing is the ability to hold polarizing experiences at the same time. When they're younger, it's like this I'm either this or I'm that. And it's very clear. And as they go through this process of, I feel this, but on the other hand, I feel that, and when we as parents can reflect that without it being a problem and actually invite it, like, oh, yeah, you're experiencing two opposite feelings at the same exact time. You have the capacity to do that. Then we're inviting people into maturation. And so when here we are in midlife and suddenly exploring, wow, I want connection. I want separateness. I want to be happily married. I want to go travel the world, or there's things that like, not that you can't do, you can always do all of it, right? And like, but it's just this dance that gets really activated in midlife when there's kind of trauma or stuckness from adolescence.
Mm. What do you say, or how do you approach someone or a couple? I know we're working with couples a lot. When one person is very much in a growth pattern, an individuation process, heading towards maturity, already in maturity, and wanting to explore and discover and is just sparking, right? They've got all this energy around what's next and oh my gosh and curiosity. And the other partner is like, I don't know what you're talking about. Everything's fine. Like I don't have any desire. Like I just want everything to stay the same. Like we're fine. What are you talking about? And this could be in a lot of different ways. It could be sexually, it could be personal growth, it could be travel, it could be, a new career. It could be a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Angie, I think this is actually the ultimate challenge in a partnership. People say that it's sex, money, in-laws. Like, no, it's this. It's when one is having a growth spurt and the other one is not. So one thing that I like to start with any relationship, but in couples particularly, is really naming that this is all this is a growth spurt. This doesn't actually, we have to start with seeing each other for where we're at without attaching judgment to it. And that is a really hard practice that I think takes a lot of work. Um, for the person that is in the growth spurt, you know, there is no part of me that would ever say, slow down, right? It's like you are growing and follow that sparkle dust, follow your heart, stay with it, and start to identify what really lands you at the same time. Because in that expansion, we actually, so to go back to opposites, we actually need something to ground us in the time, because with too much expansion, we can be unrelatable. And so that, and if relationship is still important, then we have to find ways that keep us relatable. And so that can come with practices of rooting. That can come with just, again, using polarizing examples in your hand. It can be about naming it. It can be around finding time for connection and really carving that out. But it is really important to be able to ground, to root in the expansion. And for the person that is not growing at that time, is a reminders that we often have to trust that we will always have different growth spurts throughout, that they're not always going to happen the same, they're not going to look the same, but that with growth is how we continue to evolve as a partnership too. So there has to be an invitation to finding ways that the other partner can find growth in their life. Because when someone kind of is just stagnant completely, that's when we start to see real problems. But if someone is invited in on their own way of where they can expand their mind even a little bit, or expand a hobby, or just change something up, then they can actually start to follow their own sparkle dust thread. But to really give permission that it doesn't have to look like your partner's, but there's always a nugget of growth somewhere in there, always.
What if what if one partner is, let's say the growth partner is is pretty tied to the story of what it should look like, should in quotes, should look like, and they really want their partner with them in this journey. Like, yes, I know you don't have to be with me, but I really want you with me. Like, how do you approach a situation like that?
Oh, such a good question. I mean, I think again, we start with naming what we want, right? We start with naming how we feel, what we want. But then there also has to be room for grief when there's disappointment. And that some will say in a long-term relationship, we'll have seven different relationships within that relationship. And so in any cycles, there's going to be levels of grief and disappointment. So it's really developing the capacity to sit with that disappointment. If it's, an isolated thing, if this is years and years in history of disappointment, then that's another kind of conversation, around, are we growing together? And actually, what I think makes this relationship truly successful is the desire to have shared dreams. This comes from John Gottman's research, who I was trained by that many, many years ago, that, you know, a couple needs to have shared dreams to really thrive. You can survive being in really different places, but if you want to thrive, then you have to get there on some level. And it doesn't mean it has to look exactly the same, like I was saying before. But if there's an invitation, like you were saying, I think my way is right, or I really want you in my journey with me, you know, I would, if I was sitting with a couple, I would probably slow it all down and invite the listener to postpone their own agenda, to get really curious with the speaker of what's happening, what do they want, what's underneath it, what is it activating inside, and then they can flip flop. And that ability to postpone one's own agenda is how you really start to hear it in such a different way, so that their story isn't a threat. Because that's kind of what I heard you saying, is like, if someone is on this great growth spurt and wants you in, and the partner doesn't want to, and they can suddenly feel contracted and like it's a threat, game over. Things are not going to flow. So it's around how we communicate and get there to eventually find a shared dream, is how we move from survival to thriving in a partnership.
Hmm. That's really amazing. And going back to internal family systems and the parts work, I imagine that there's a real usefulness in that work too, even in relationship. And it could be any relationship, really. Any intimate relationship, could be a parent-child, could be a spousal or partnership relationship, of when we have when we can sniff out each other's parts, or if we have some information or some knowledge, that we can acknowledge that, and not weaponize it. You're like, oh, that's your protector part. Like, not coming from that place, but having a true understanding and acknowledgement, and can have a conversation, like you said, and kind of start to really listen without your own stuff in the way. And curiosity. I mean, just curiosity all over the place. And then you can kind of dive under that a little bit to see, like, oh, I hear you now. This is what we're going after, right? It's not that you want to leave or go off and do whatever. It's that this is what's trying to occur. We're trying to get to connection, or whatever the thing is.
That's right. Oh, you just said so many nuggets. I mean, the art of really listening is a lost art for sure, because of the world we're living in. I mean, we were used to sound bites and dings and 10 ways to do this and da 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 that. And then, everything is very like short and condensed. And when we actually really learn how to listen, I can actually promise you relationships will change, because that is, again, then we bring in, even as I say it, like the somatic experience starts to kind of open itself up to sharing space with someone else, and seeing them as it becomes a circle, seeing them as separate from you, and learning about them when we turn on that curious mind. And man, is it hard to really turn on that curious mind. This is something I'm going to digress for one sec, that I often work with moms, is they're like, how do I not sound so interrogating when I'm curious? And I will say, if it's coming from if there's an interrogating energy around it, you're not in your curious mind. You're coming from a place of fear, or, rigidity, or there's still a contraction in your body, usually coming from a place of being dysregulated. So the only way we can actually really get curious is if we tend to ourselves first, find ways to regulate. And even if it's just getting your heart rate down a little bit, so that you can feel your body again and have access to your words, and really meet someone with, tell me what's happening for you right now. Like, I really want to understand. And there's a different energy around that level of curiosity. So I think that is a true practice. And I have missed the mark like 3 times already today. Like, I'm being curious. No, I'm not. Like,
But am I
I'm very
really?
intense. No, I'm not. And I know for me, like, and like you, movement, I need to get heavy in my feet and like really hear my voice and move around. I have a room I can really move in, to then just like feel it and try again. So that's one nugget that you just brought to light so beautifully.
Yeah, and as you were speaking, to give I always love to give as many, like, you can now go do this as soon as you turn this podcast off and try this type thing,
Totally. Yes.
without it being prescriptive, because I don't believe in prescriptions either. So, but what you were just saying about regulation. So when we talk about regulation and dysregulation, we're talking about the nervous system. So, and like when you were just saying, you know, it's important to regulate. Like if, for example, if you're going to go, if you're having a conversation and you're wanting to get curious and make that distinction between am I interrogating or am I curious? And they have a completely different flavor. Even if you were to write those words down and pay attention to how you feel, you would probably get a hit of the difference of how it feels, even writing the words down. And then to come to a place of more nervous system regulation, like you were speaking to earlier in the conversation about being relaxed. When I'm
Yes.
curious, I'm relaxed. When I'm interrogating, I'm up. I'm
That's
activated in
right.
some way. So to lower that, or to down regulate a little bit, to sink into relaxation, sink into your feet, like you were just talking to, extend, and tell me if you agree, extending our, just a simple breathing process, extending the exhale longer than the inhale, right? So someone could just stop for a few moments, breathe in for a count of 4, hold for a second, and then breathe out for a count of 8. And repeat that just a few times. And that will help to regulate the nervous system and bring us into a place of relaxation so that then we have a shot at listening and
That's
communication
right.
and
That's
curiosity.
right.
Because if I'm up here and I'm all, oh, it's going to come across as interrogation.
That's right. And even as you were saying it, I literally just felt my body settle. It was amazing. You slowed down your voice. You talked about the longer exhale. It's just an invitation in. And when we are regulated, our brains function better. We have more choice. We have more perspective. And that's actually, those are the things we need to be in relationship. Those are the things that if we want to actually deepen the connection, there has to be that invitation. So you named that longer exhale. I mean, I can think of 3 other little things that are just one, and people have to find what's right for them, but a classic is box breathing, like in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. What I do with my kids is lotus breathing. So I have my hand in a fist, and as I inhale, my hand expands, and as I exhale, my hand closes again. And that actual sensory, that motion with the hand is really important because it not only helps with breath, but your eyes see it, your hands feel it. There's a tightening of muscles and then an actual relaxing piece that comes with it. So that's a wonderful thing. People could even do 10 jumping jacks just to kind of move their blood a little bit and then stop and feel the earth. Some people I know do great with really turning music on. Music is such medicine, as you were saying before, intentional music that, just really speaks to the soul and calms down the system. One thing when I'm talking with families is I'm like, how do you regulate the system of the house? Right? And like when my kids come home from school, like I want to have like music on and just like welcome them in as they transition from being in this world where they're working so damn hard to come in a place where they can just rest. And in their rest, I'm going to get the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Because that's where they're resting. But if I can know that, have that awareness that I'm inviting them in to rest, I can hold steady and hold space for them. I might light a candle, something that's going to just invite moments of calm.
What you were just speaking to about creating a system, creating an environment for the house. Ah, that's amazing. Like, because each of us is our own system, and then we
Yes.
create a larger system. It's like mushrooms and mycelial network, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's like we have our own system, but then they're all linked and they're all networked together. And creating a system for the house, like that is brilliant. It like
Wonderful.
I feel that, right? And you
Yeah,
like light a candle, put the music on, and then it brings everyone into a state of relaxation. Oh,
that's
it's so
right.
good.
That's
So
right.
good.
One thing I just want to go back to something you said that was so important that I just want to clarify was when in partnership, you said, if I can kind of sniff out my partner's parts, I think that that takes tremendous skill to be able to do that in a way that's not invasive, and then you followed it by saying, but I can get curious with my partner. And so I think in any relationship, we have to be so mindful to not tell anyone what they are or how they feel. It is an instant communication stopper, you know, even the, you seem da 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 da. Right? It's like, and I do it all the time. So I'm learning this one every day, like replacing you seem, or, even in the gentlest, like, I wonder if your, you know, procrastinator part is showing up right now. Like, some couples that have the language and have humor and levity and that deep sense of security can go there for sure. But I just think that that is something we have to be really careful with, and to really replace all of that with, like, what do you know about you right now? You know?
Thank you for making that clarification because you are absolutely correct. And I know from my own personal history that when I'm told how I feel, I don't like it at all.
No, me
So,
neither.
like, oh, well, you see exactly what you said. Like, well, you're kind of tight right now. I'm like, fuck off, you know?
Yes, yes,
So, yes,
exactly.
thank you for bringing that back in and clarifying it because it is. It's just really stepping back into that place of curiosity and just saying, tell me about you right now,
Yeah,
you know, and not making that assumption that what's happening over there.
totally. It will almost always go south.
With
And
children
like
too, with
oh,
kids.
100%. And I do it. I am learning this over and over. So that's why I love that you just laughed, because we have to bring humor and humility into it, because this is a non-linear, you know, journey, right? This is just a forever. We keep learning, we keep learning. And like, that's what I think I love the most about this mindset of like, how can we do different? How can I do it different tomorrow? And that's the beauty of repair. So if we go back to another layer of relationship, whether it's partnership or parent and child, and this is so big with adolescents right now, is really, really like fostering and nourishing those conscious repairs, because that will always override the fight every time. And it's something that I really want all our listeners to just know, that we're going to make mistakes. We're going to fuck up all the time. Ooh, sorry. And, but then when we can kind of come in and be like, hey, this is what happened. This is what I did. What do you think you did? Let's like look at it from bird's eye view, and maybe tomorrow is different. It doesn't have to be a whole big thing, but it really sets a tone for humility and so much beauty.
Mm. I have a quick question that I want to get to, and then I really want to move on to kids and the mother daughter journey. Do you think? I'm imagining what this could be, but do you think, or do parts have their own somatic expression? Meaning, in the parts work, will a part, let's say a protector part or whatever they are for someone, will they have a somatic feeling that they carry so that if someone is, um, let's say, triggered by something or upset or tense or trying to figure out, like, God, why am I feeling this way? And especially this can happen in midlife, like, oh my God, I feel like I'm going crazy. What is happening? That that parts have kind of a signature that you can get curious about and say, like, whoa, what do I know? My protector part has this feeling. Maybe I should check in. Does this question
100%.
make sense?
Oh yeah, it makes perfect
Okay.
sense. And in fact, when I'm first inviting someone to learn about the part, one of the first things I'll ask them is, what do you have a sense of what the part is somatically experiencing? And that's like literally the first question, because it's so profound. So you are so onto it. And then then I'll invite the self to thank that part for being so clear about their sensory experience. So, and then we just name it, and I often bring touch to it because it just brings in that like loving contact. And, but yes, so then to your point, when you're not in parts work and you start to feel a contraction or my throat, that would be an indicator for, and oh, let me back up. The beautiful thing about parts work is that we train people to do it on themselves, right? Once you really start to get to know it, you really can do it. And it's so cool to be able to be your own provider,
Mm.
it's like so much agency. And so then there's an invitation of recognizing, okay, my throat is really tight. I wonder what part is showing up. And that's when we are just like, I'm going to ask the part to give me a little bit of space, because then we can see that it's not you. It's just a part of you. And sometimes just that invitation alone settles everything down so you can access curiosity.
Mm. Yeah. That yeah, that feels, I can see how that would be the case and be really helpful. And like you said, being able to be your own provider so that you can track yourself wherever you are. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, that level of self awareness is just, there's just no messing around at that point,
Mm. Yeah.
right?
That's great. I love it. No messing around at that point. Um, I want to move into the mother-daughter journey and work with adolescents. So my daughter's 20, my son is 23. Maybe we're out of the adolescent phase. Um, and we have the relationships that we have and we've been where we've been. And I'm really curious with you what you're seeing right now in this age group of, let's say, 9 to 10th grade. Like what's happening with these young people? What's it like to be young right now
Oof.
that you're hearing?
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, it's really hard to be young right now. I mean, all right, I'm going to try and explain this as succinctly as I can. Um, so I do groups with moms with 9 to 11-year-olds, and then I do groups with moms with middle schoolers. And then I do mother daughter together workshops for moms of middle schoolers. But the prerequisite is to do the mom only group, just to know. So I get to, and I only offer those a couple times a year, the mom and daughter together, because it's a lot of work to kind of get the kids in and just build up. But it's an all day retreat and it's so powerful, and they learn all these amazing, it's all very action oriented, how to communicate, how to, keep each other in the know, how to fight, how to repair, all these different levels. And then I do these workshops that this one's a brand new one that I'm just starting to play with, which I just finished the first one of moms of 9th and 10th graders. And it was so beautiful. And it was just, and they're all so different. So when you're asking what's it like to be an adolescent right now, the reason I start at 9 is because 9 is really when the 9-year change happens. And it's when there's the first kind of mini existential crisis for kids across the board. It's always been this way. It's when abstract thinking starts to come in. It's when they start to grieve their feelings, their loss of magic. They don't know that they're grieving it, but it's like where they once saw the fairies, now they are like, I don't really see the fairies anymore. And we just have to kind of hold their hand into feeling the fairies and knowing that the
Mm.
magic is always within. And, so how we hold that space, that can come out as all these different, um, personality quirks that we never saw before. And so I like to empower moms to know what's normal and when to worry, and, how to stay steady in themselves so they can hold space for their kids to grow and learn and develop. When you're asking what's happening right now, the biggest thing that we're seeing that we used to not see is that because we don't have as much village mentality, kids are orienting towards peers more than orienting towards family. And the peer orientation is happening too soon, in my opinion, and in many's opinion. And what happens when they start to orient towards peer is that there's this lateral relationship that takes out so much certainty, trust, reliability, consistency that you would get in a hierarchical relationship of a family. And it's becoming quite dangerous, and it's being filled with distractions. And learn, if a kiddo is getting their information and their accolades and their sense of self through another kiddo that's going through the same kind of awkward transition of becoming an adolescent, they're not going to get a clear reflection of who they are. And in a family system, they will get a clear reflection because can we can confidently reflect what we see. We love them so much. We're holding their best intentions in our hearts. And, we're just really, that hierarchical style allows a child to really become who they are, that doesn't compete with blending and fitting in. Okay. Now, there's always been peer orienting that has historically happened later and later. And of course, that's necessary, and it's normal. But it's becoming the need to keep up and stay in touch is getting in the way of people really individuating and becoming their own sense of self. And that is so much based on the technology world that they're living in. I mean, Snapchat is a perfect example in itself of, and my older daughter has Snapchat, so I'm not judging Snapchat so much, but I'm scared of Snapchat. It makes me very uncomfortable. And I feel like I'm in a pickle all the time with wanting them to stay connected to their friends, but also this constant need to stay in touch doesn't actually allow space for boredom. And in boredom, there's creativity, there's understanding, there's feelings, right? There's all of this distraction takes them away from feelings. And feelings, like we started our talk with, is how you get to maturation, is by allowing yourself to feel. And so I could go on and on, but I think you get the sense of what we're seeing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a lot to say about
I know.
all of that. What's it like for the moms? Because, like I said, in my experience, mine are just out of that range. What's it like for moms right now? I mean, even in midlife, midlife is a range. So there might be people listening that have 9, 10 year olds or high school or, teenagers in some capacity. So what's it like for the moms right now?
I think that moms that I get to work with are unbelievably isolated at times, which is why these groups, or any kind of group, dancing in your group, something that brings women together to just be vulnerable and name the messy and have a space to just be like, I don't know what to do. I don't know I don't have my intuition right now because I'm so confused by their craziness, which is totally normal. Um, I think a lot of moms are not totally trusting themselves. And some of the work I want to help bring out is like, you have the answers, they are in there. And we actually have to learn to quiet down the noise to come back to what we know to be true, because no one knows your kid better than you, right? And your job is to, what I help moms do is we tap into our deep wisdom, but we learn to say less so that we can actually pull out our daughter's inner wisdom, right? Because they have so much wisdom and we just have to fine tune our skills to like really let them guide themselves while we are learning how to hold really steady containers for them to get messy. And yeah, and what I see with these moms too, moms are, I mean, I think one thing that I love to bring to my mom groups is humility. We bring levity. We have there's lots of strategies around just different ways, like we were talking before, to access curiosity. A huge piece is, how do you tend to yourself, right? Moms forever have put themselves in like fifth place of who to care for. And this is such a huge piece of the puzzle, is how do you really care for yourself? And that word can be so triggering, self-care. It's like, oh, massage, getting my nails done. Like, no, Actually, like, sure, that could be caring for yourself, but what are the little daily bite-sized habits that you can bring into your life that actually give you permission to experience everything that's coming up for you? Give you permission to be really scared and emotional, and then have the skills to come back into your body so that you can access your perspective and your logical mind.
I think that's brilliant. The what you just said, like coming back into your body. Like as I think about my own path of motherhood and where it's been and where it is and where it's going with older children now. And I think that being able to be in your body and be present, true. And that's a kind of another word like self-care. It's like be present, be in the now. Yes, but like, gosh, do we really know what that feels like? I mean, deeply know what that means, that you're so in that moment with your child that you don't have to say a lot.
That's right.
They
That's
feel it.
right.
They feel
Yes,
your presence.
that's it. Speaking less gives more room. And, that's the other piece, what you were just saying. Like, yeah, presence is like a buzzword, but you just said it. When you said it, I felt it in my body. Like, you just know when you are. And I think that when we are present, we feel more confident, right? And our daughters, and I've been using daughter very gender closed, so I want our listeners to know that my groups are welcome to all those that identify as daughter and all those that identify as mother. So that is something I usually say right from the get-go. So my apologies. But we want to get our daughters need to see us as confident women. And to really start to break down that confidence doesn't mean like, it doesn't mean tough. It doesn't mean big. That's actually an exercise I do with my moms is, what does confidence mean to you today? And how can you identify when you feel it in your body? What kind of environmental factors bring you into a different state of confidence? I know personally for me, when I have more awareness and knowledge about what's going on for my kiddos developmentally, that level of awareness gives me so much confidence to just like see it for what it is and not take it personally. Right?
That not taking it personally. Like, I just want to repeat that on a loop.
Yeah.
Like, not taking it personally, because I think as moms, as parents, we as humans, we tend to take things personally
Yep. We do.
when it's not always necessarily the case. Like that, creating that little bit of separation, and this could even go back to the parts work, creating that little bit of separation to where I can somehow land in my capital S self and see that person in front of me. And it can be incredibly, in my own experience, it can be incredibly difficult when it's your child, because you really want to get in there and help and fix and like make it better,
Yes.
instead of
Yes.
just stopping and taking a breath and saying, wow, what's going on over there for you? That must be
Right.
painful.
Yes.
And not taking it personally and not being attached, because we feel like um, if we're not in it, then we don't care. Does that make
That's
sense?
Oh, it makes so much sense. The thing that I love to remember, when it feels personal, when they are
Mm-hmm.
lame and like
Oh,
being assholes, and they are, like, let's
yes,
be honest.
yes.
Yes, it feels really personal. And I can feel so clearly when I get hooked and I take it personally. It just happened a couple nights ago. I was out to dinner with my girls. We were on a date. I was taking them to see Ani DeFranco, who's like one of my favorite old school musicians. I know. And the dinner was like not going well, and I had this whole attachment to how I wanted it to look, and I was so clear that I got overly attached to an idea. And then they started doing things, and I took it personally, and I literally became an adolescent, and I felt my body. It was all this muscle memory of what it was like to be stuck and be like, all the things that came up with my adolescence. And what I know to be true and what I felt so clearly in that moment was I lost them. Like, the moment I took it personally, I lost all connection with them. because I self-abandoned and then they self-abandoned. So I was suddenly not the person that they can rely on. And like I was saying before, in these hierarchical relationships, they need to rely on us. And so I did what I know to do. I was like, wow, I'm so not feeling good about how I'm behaving right now. I removed myself. I went to the bathroom, splashed some water on my face. I did some breathing. I looked myself in the mirror because I actually really like to make contact with my own eyes. And I was just like, I am an adult. They are not. I have a fully developed brain. They do not. And it shifted and I came back and we repaired and we ended up to have a really, really great night. But I could just feel that losing of connection right then and there. And it's an awful feeling. And so then we tend and we repair and we try again.
I truly could sit here and talk to you for like 10 hours straight.
Me too.
There's so many juicy good things. And that example that you just gave and about the abandonment and self-abandonment, I think I know, I mean, I, I have definitely felt that. And I'm sure our listeners have as well. Like that feeling of like, I have lost them. I'm now 13 years old and I have become attached and I'm not like, and we might not have that particular language for it or that particular framing, but that's what's happening. And we all know what that feels like. And then we
Yes.
try to, in my experience, we try to, a lot of times I think we try to overshoot or over adult and like, now we need to do this and this is how it needs to be. And what are you going to, and you're doing it wrong. And it totally misses the point. It's like, oh my God, you're just sinking deeper and deeper and deeper into it. And then there's real tension instead of like exactly what you just said, like, oh, wait, I'm noticing where I am. I'm the one who's going to go take a break. I'm the one who's going to go reset.
Yes, that's right. So yes, I too, Angie, I could talk to you for hours and hours, and I know that our time is probably running up. I can just tell our listeners to one other little tip because that I think can be so helpful is to create a few mantras that you have as reminders and you put them in your bathroom, like on the mirror. And while you're brushing your teeth, you just see them. And so the ones for me that I love, and this can go with partnering or parenting, but it's like for partnering, it might be something like, you know, my partner is doing the best he can with the skills he has, or something, or I am fully responsible for my own feelings. I am responsible for me, or I am an adult and they are not, or speak less, listen more. Just like little reminders. And so, whatever, as you're listening, write down things that speak to you, maybe that you heard today, maybe that you hear anywhere, it's just that are intuitive. But like, I think that because it's so easy to get dysregulated, that's when we forget things. Our brains literally won't function as well. So we need all the little reminders we can get. And
That's
just one little.
beautiful. Thank you so much. This has been an extraordinary conversation. I cannot wait to share it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. And tell us where we can find you. Do you have anything you want to share? What are you up to? Do you have anything coming up?
Yes, thank you. So right now I'm about to wrap up my whole workshop season as we prepare for summer, but I have two workshops happening in April. I have a virtual workshop that I'm really trying. Basically I have a virtual workshop for mothers of middle school girls. And that is on Thursdays during the day. And you can find all that information out on my website. And then I have just a few slots left in my in-person workshop for moms of 9 to 11-year-olds. And that's in Boulder. And then stay tuned. Oh, I'm going to be doing I do a couple dad workshops a year. And so I'm doing a dad one sometime in May. So that'll be on my newsletter and on my website. And then we'll have a little break in the summer and everything will regroup in the fall.
That's amazing. Well, you are doing such important work, and I love the mother-daughter journey. And that is your website. I'll put all this in the show notes, but your website is motherdaughterjourney.com.
That's .co,
.co.
motherdaugghterjourney.co. That's correct. And
Got
that's
it.
the heart of my work right now. But I still have a strong private practice in parent coaching. So if anyone needs anything, just give a holler. I love to support people.
That's wonderful. Well, Deb, again, this has been a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been so wonderful. Good.
I'll
Keep up
talk
your
soon.
good, amazing work because you are spreading the magic, truly. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's funny. I'm finding that each podcast episode is like a child, and they are all my favorites. But this one I found to be especially dynamic and shareable. So if you know someone that could benefit from this conversation, please share this episode. And if you're new here, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast. And you can even subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want to see these conversations. And you can also follow me, Angie.bird, on Instagram. This will help the show gain momentum and help other women out there who are also looking to bring some magic and mayhem into their lives as well.